Welcome to Inside Marketing with MarketSurge, your front row seat to the boldest ideas and smartest strategies in the marketing game. Your host is Reed Hansen, Chief Growth Officer at MarketSurge.
Hello and welcome back to Inside Marketing with MarketSurge. I'm Reed Hansen, the Chief Growth Officer at MarketSurge, and today's guest is Sheldon Poon, CEO of Drive Marketing and a performance PPC specialist helping in-house marketing teams turn better data into smarter AI decisions, higher ROAS, and lower CPAs. Sheldon bridges something most marketers struggle with, the gap between flashy content and hard data. He's deeply technical, obsessed with clean tracking, and outspoken about where AI helps and where it wrecks your ad spend. We're going to unpack why bad data destroys AI performance, the real difference between predictive and generative AI, what most in-house teams get wrong about PPC, and what it takes to hit 60x ROAS without it being a fluke. Sheldon, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. So, from information we've received about you and Drive Marketing, you talk a lot about how better data leads to smarter AI and a higher ROAS. Can you talk a little bit about that, how that comes to be?
Yeah, definitely. So obviously the big headline these days in marketing, right? Like everybody is talking about AI, whether it comes to tech, when it comes to content, when it comes to jobs, like AI is kind of like the big man. I have been working in AI and emerging technologies for my entire career. So like 20 years, AI for at least the last 10. So like I thought I was getting into AI late when I was working with TensorFlow and writing Python scripts. And I'm quite proud to say that like we were actually very early, as it turns out. So as new stuff has been coming out, we've been able to stay on top of it. Fast forward to today, and the first question I always get whenever people are asking us like, hey, like, tell us what we're doing wrong when it comes to PPC, tell us how we can improve our ROAS. The first question is always like, what are you guys doing with AI? What is Drive Marketing doing in terms of AI? And there's always this misunderstanding that AI is the end all be all, when really it comes down to how you train the tools, and the training of these tools and algorithms comes down to the quality of your data. So the big gap that we're always seeing is that, hey, you have terrible data. Of course, your AI tool is not working. You've trained it badly, so it's performing badly because it's only as smart and as accurate on auditing digital footprint terms of the next two things. In terms of the data, it has to 1,000%. You start diving into the code and you look at the entire footprint, where it's complex to stitch that together in such a way that the ads platforms and the AIs will perform the way that you want. And that's really what we specialize in. That's the reason why, even though we're a marketing company, really we're a bunch of tech nerds that kind of work this as marketing on it, because most of my team is very, very technical. I myself have a computer science background. We have a lot of devs on the team. So when we talk about bridging that gap, right, between content and tech and AI, really what we're doing is we're trying to take the content and the digital footprint that our clients have, like all the stories, all the case studies, all the flashy brand stuff that is usually excellent and is usually very, very much on point in terms of messaging. And we make sure to convert that into actionable, hard, objective data that's clean, that can be fed into an ads algorithm that can then take action and create a feedback loop to be able to turn that content into actual revenue. So that's kind of what we specialize in.
So you mentioned about, we're talking a lot about the importance of clean data, good data. Where are you seeing the Google Analytics data, GA4 data really falling down? Like, are there common places where you're like, like I knew it. I knew that's where you're getting bad data,
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we see most often is that ad agencies don't, for whatever reason, even in 2026, they don't tend to understand the importance of the granularity of the data. So a lot of the times, I always joke that like a lot of our clients come because we're usually friends that have like a big red phone on their desk that like something's wrong, call Sheldon. And usually the number one thing that we see is that there's attribution problems where both Facebook and Google are trying to claim that they were the one that brought the revenue, or that Facebook is double firing the revenue, or that, Google was reporting that we made 2 million for the client this month, but really like when we talk to the client, there's only 500K in there. So those types of disconnects are usually a thing that we see quite often, because a lot of the times these ads agencies are not technical, so they rely on a third party web development agency, and that disconnect makes it so that the ad agency is saying like, oh, we need this data, install this tag. The web agency, the technical guys that don't understand the importance of the marketing and business side, so like, well, I installed the tag, what do you want me to do? The tag is firing. And the ad agency then gets into the situation where, because they don't have the technical skill to diagnose why there's a problem, there's a communications breakdown where the technical guys are going like, as far as we can tell, we installed the tag. You told us to install this tag. We installed it. We don't know what it's supposed to do. The ad agency goes, the data is not right. You guys need to fix something. And then the communications breakdown. And it's usually at that point that people call me and my team, because we bridge that gap and we understand both sides. So we're able to dig in and diagnose those problems. And a lot of it just comes down to don't just install the default tag, actually go through the process of vetting your data properly.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Now, I understand that you hit 60x ROAS for a client. Tell us about that. How's that even possible? And why are you still doing what you're doing and not just like on an island somewhere?
So this is a client of ours in the automotive space, right? So I think in the automotive space, the industry average ROAS is something around 8x. So when my guys were kind of just doing the regular monitoring, the dashboard came up and we started calculating like 60 something X ROAS. And right away, my ads guys flagged this like, oh my God, something's wrong. Something's broken. It just became like chaos at the office for a minute. The devs were like pulled out of their projects. Everybody had an emergency meeting. The ads guys were reviewing their dashboards. The devs were told like, review everything on the website, find out what happened, find out what's wrong. Our accounts guys got on the phone with the client to apologize and say like, hey, something's broken, really sorry. I got the short stick. I had to call the CEO of the company and I was like, hey, how's it going? Can I ask you what your current revenue is? And he's like, why? I'm like, nah, we're having a bit of a data issue. Just bear with me. He gives me the number. I check against our reports. I was like, oh my God, this is 90% accurate.
Wow.
So I told my guys, like, drop everything. Everything's fine. Like, stop trying to find this red flag. It turns out that everything was just firing. All it was, I think it was a combination of things. Because I then called the CEO back. And I said, listen, like, don't freak out, but we absolutely killed it this month. Don't expect this every month.
Yeah, that's right.
But basically what was happening was the way that my guys were bidding, because even though like a lot of it's AI driven, right? We still have to adjust the bids pretty much every 2 days just to make sure that it stay like, what we tend to do is if you imagine like a graph, we create like a channel. And as long as it falls in between that, we're okay. And every time it dips below in terms of performance, we adjust it to go back up with budget. And anytime it starts going over budget, we adjust it back down. So what ended up happening was one of the guys on the team, Jack, I think it was, saw an opportunity because it coincided with the tariff scare.
Okay.
And the tariff scare made it so that people recognize that these parts are about to get expensive. So it just coincided with, there's a couple of regions where I think it was just a high season mixed in with the fact that they had unusually nice weather. So people are just working on their cars and we just hit them at the right spot. So it just by making sure that the data was solid, mixed in with a little bit of intuition, Jack basically okayed a higher spend for that period just to see what will come of it. And because he okayed the higher spend based on the data that we had, it was outbidding a lot of the competition. So we were able to capture people at the moment of intent, outrank the competition, and we just captured more of that traffic. So it was a very calculated risk based on very, very good data, and it ended up paying off, and that's how we were able to get it. So that was a one-off for that month, but consistently that account gets around 32 return on ad spend, and we're quite proud of that. Like the account just fires really well across the board. website's very well optimized. Their customer service is excellent. Their inventory is good. It's just like one of these unicorn clients where everything aligns across the board. We work very closely with that team on a regular basis. They're fun to work with, and we just get really good results out of it.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, keep that client forever. That's a great story. Now, you pointed something out about the bidding, and you're actively bidding on in some instances. Google and Meta are pushing automation like crazy, and in all sorts of things, like even in the image and text generation, they are just very active and trying to enhance the offering. What's your overall opinion about the effectiveness of those AIs inside of
Very bad, very bad.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Has it gotten any better, or is it improving, or?
So this is one of the things that I always have to kind of caveat whenever I'm introducing people to the idea of AI a little bit more deeply than what, the flashy headline. So most people, when they think of AI today, they think of LLMs. So ChatGPT, Claude, and, these kind of AI platforms where you log in and you start having a chat with Gemini and it generates something for you. That type of AI is a generative AI, and it's captured a lot of attention because it's tangible, right? Like you can log into chatgpt.com and start having a conversation. So people have like a better understanding, a better grasp of it. Most of what we do is based on predictive AI. And when we start getting to predictive AI, it's not generating anything. It's using existing data to predict outcomes and then action on those outcomes. And that's traditionally where the ad platforms have been focused. So when we're using Google, we use something called PMax, which is essentially a predictive AI that takes all of your assets that you put into a library, and then it decides what is the best audience for this particular asset. And it will go across Google Search, Google Display, YouTube, and it'll just decide what's going to get the best result based on your settings. So that's largely the predictive AI that we've always been very happy with. What's happened recently is that Facebook and Google, to your point, have started rolling out generative AI on top of the predictive AI. And that's our gripe. It's done a horrible job. With Meta in particular, they released this new algorithm called Advantage Plus, which is their version of Google's PMax. And it's supposed to do the same thing where just like Google has multiple platforms, Meta has Facebook, they have Instagram, they have WhatsApp. And the idea is that Advantage Plus is supposed to do something similar where at the profile level, you feed it all of your assets and it will decide, okay, this one goes in Facebook, this one's doing well in Reels, this one's doing well in Instagram, and it just kind of like decides. The struggle that we've had with Meta is that for whatever reason, Meta has started shoving the generative stuff down our throats. So it'll take our assets and then it will decide to create new assets from it and then just push that out. So there's a big problem here because one, it's using ad spend that we didn't really approve of. And two, we've had situations where some of our clients are in fashion, right? So they're very conscious of their brand and they freaked out because they're like, who approved this? And we had to tell them nobody. So they were not happy when they saw their product being misrepresented, when they saw their brand being misrepresented. We ended up having to we had an emergency call a couple of weeks ago where I literally had myself and three of our executives in Facebook doing screen share, digging through Meta to try to figure out where the generative AI was pulling these assets from, why it was generating garbage, why it was sending people to a blog page on our e-commerce client's website. We had to go literally 4 menu layers deep to find a random checkbox that said it's going to automatically scan the site and decide what the catalog is. And it decided on a blog article from 2021. We had to get rid of that. We found a bunch of assets that generated that were just complete garbage. It was pointing things to so we had to comb through the entire system to manually uncheck anything that had any piece of generative AI. And it took us we had 4 execs on that call. It took us like 2 hours. And then we had to repeat this for all of our other clients. And to make things worse, what would happen is so one of our team members on a screen share would uncheck a box, hit save in Meta. And then we would go back on one of our computers and check, and we would see that the check rechecked itself. And then when she refreshed, it had reached. So there was a bunch of problems with the Meta platform where it was just forcing the AI options and we could not get rid of it. So in the end, I think that week we lost probably a good, in total, like 20 or 30 man hours just going back and undoing the AI generative stuff that it was trying to shove down our throat. And this is, again, like the AI going rogue like that, it's costing us money because it's using ad spend for stuff that doesn't work, for stuff that misrepresents the brand and gets us as an agency in trouble with our client. So I'm not a huge fan of the generative AI stuff at all.
Okay. I mean, are we going to have a different conversation in a year? Like, are you, what do you think? Like,
I hope so. We've had other anecdotal stories like this. Like, it's not any better on the Google side. Another fashion brand also called and complained because they saw this random video on YouTube. And what they had done was Google took a bunch of the videos and the assets that we had already created manually. It spun up its own YouTube channel that nobody had access to, and it started running its own generated videos through that.
oh, no.
Yeah. It was really, really frustrating because we had no control and no eyes on this account. But when we dug into the data, frustratingly, those ads that it generated were outperforming the approved assets the client had given us.
Interesting.
So the frustrating thing is that while, yes, we have no control over it and it doesn't represent the brand well, that to me is a problem that the way that Gemini is going, I think they'll eventually be able to fix that.
Okay.
And the real strength and the takeaway from it is that despite the fact that it was misrepresenting the brand, which I think they will fix eventually, they were able to generate an asset based on the data that the AI was collecting in a way that created an asset that outperformed our human created assets. So in a year from now, who knows? Like it might be the case that they find a sweet spot where it's able to do the work properly in a way that and gives us some sort of eyes and approval process that mixes in this very, very smart kind of content creation based on hard data, based on the objectives that we fed the algorithm, the campaign. So there's a lot of interesting stuff happening. Whatever's happening now is definitely not going to stay the way it is. So in a year from now, who knows? It might be a very different conversation where I'm like, yeah, we are fully like on board with generative AI.
That's an interesting situation. I don't think many agencies or brand are quite as diligent with the data as you are. And I think, and working in fashion, I think that might be one of the most brand and visual, like adhere to standards industries. And like interesting, you point out the AI generated stuff, it didn't match the brand standards, but it performed well. And, I think there's a lot of companies that would say like, well, my brand is making money. My brand standard is like, I don't care what it looks like. But where do you think that balance is? Like ideally, like if you were a company that hadn't been advertising and wanted to start advertising for some additional growth, what would you recommend as far as a balance between what's available on AI and the human diligence that is required to be really precise?
So that's kind of like the main question. I think that's the real question I think people are asking when they come to us and say like, what are we doing with AI, right? That's what they want to get down to.
Yeah.
I think for us, the best use of AI has been for us to look at our own processes, very clearly map out the standard operating procedure for a given process so that we can tear it apart and say, well, this is grunt work, and hand those pieces off to AI so that we can be more efficient. And then when we do let the AI kind of run a little bit on its own, we just need to make sure that we understand that it's a black box. And on the other side of the output, we just need to be diligent about quality assurance and making sure that we stay on top of it. So anyone who's looking at starting ads, like running ads today, I would say first and foremost, make sure your foundation is solid. Make sure that, your website is running properly. If you haven't done an audit in terms of your data, get somebody like us to go in, audit your setup, make sure that GA4 is collecting stuff properly, make sure that all of your data is clean and accurate according to your actual revenue numbers. Make sure that that foundation is clear before you spend your first dollar on ads. Because again, if your foundation is not good, your data is not good, you're just paying Meta and Google and you're not getting anything out of it. So first and foremost is just to understand your own company and make sure that your foundation is solid.
Awesome. Well, Sheldon, I can tell you are one of the real experts in this field, and I'm glad that you came on. If people would like to work with you, the people that really want high performance, they want high quality, where would they find you in your agency?
So the two easiest ways to find us is if you go on our website, drivemarketing.ca, not .com.ca. And I always joke, it's like, the Canadian, like CA. So drivemarketing.ca is our website. All of our contact information is there. We're about to post our case studies for the year, which have some interesting information and interesting numbers on it. So I'd say look out for that. And then the other really easy way is just to get in touch with me directly. I think I'm the only Sheldon Poon on LinkedIn, so I'm pretty easy to find.
Great.
So Sheldon Poon based in Montreal, just shoot me a DM. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn and I check my messages pretty regularly.
Well, fantastic. It was so great to have you on. Thanks for making the contact, and we are delighted to be connected now.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And if you're open to it, I'd love to do this again as new stuff comes up and we have new random stories I can tell you about.
I'd love that. Well, let's keep that in mind. We'll check in a month or two.
Yeah, sounds like fun.
Want to stay ahead of what's actually working in marketing right now? Head over to MarketSurge.io and see how we're helping businesses grow smarter, faster, and louder. That's MarketSurge.io, because your next breakthrough shouldn't be a guess.